just bought a Switch 1, and with the Switch 2 now on the market, it's a great time to ask, should I still buy one of these things in 2025? Well, I'm here to answer that question. Whether you're a late Nintendo Switch bloomer or maybe the Nintendo Switch 2 is just a little bit too pricey, I get it. Now listen, I've been a Nintendo Switch 1 gamer since the launch back in 2017. I've made so many videos about this thing, I'm practically turning into one. I'm just kidding. So let's talk about why you might or might not want to get a Switch 1. First of all, and probably most importantly, the price. Even in 2025, it hasn't really dropped much, or technically at all. For the Switch Lite alone, it's only $200. For the OG Nintendo Switch, like I have here, it's $300. And for the Nintendo Switch OLED, it's $350. So already the most expensive Nintendo Switch 1 is $100 less than the Switch 2. And the cheapest Switch 1 is $250 less than the Nintendo Switch 2. So that's kind of a crazy price jump. This means you're still paying close to full price for a console that originally released in 2017. That's 8 years ago. And that'd be fine if the hardware kept up, but it hasn't. It's really starting to show its age. Now, to be fair, most new Switch 1 consoles come bundled with some sort of game. So technically, you're saving the cost of a full price title. Used models are where things get a bit more reasonable though. You can find a standard used Switch for around $180, $220 for the OG, depending on the condition, battery health, and whether the seller includes the dock or just hands you the console and like some weird off-brand charger that smells funny. Why does this smell like grapes? And even at that price, I'd argue the Switch 1 still holds value, because despite being outdated, it still plays the entire Nintendo Switch library, which is one of the best gaming libraries of all time. And for a lot of people, casual gamers, families, or folks who don't care about 4K or 60 frames per second, it feels more than good enough. But it's not all great, because for the price you're paying, you're also getting slower load times, lower resolution, no built-in SSD, and of course, the classic Joy-Con drift experience. So yes, the price is technically still fair, mainly because of how many legendary games you get access to, but it's also important to remember that even if it's cheap and affordable, there are still some long-term questions to answer. Because now with the Switch 2, the Switch 1 support is winding down. It's not getting that one first-party game a month treatment like it used to, but there are still some big releases on the horizon. We're talking Metroid Prime 4, Pokemon Legends ZA, and a new Rhythm Heaven game, and that's right, Tomodachi Life! I'm gonna eat it up. Now sure, these games won't be running at 4K or 120 frames per second on the Switch 1, but the core experience is still there. Now, how long will they actually support the Switch 1 is another question. But I'm sure Nintendo will want to keep it alive for as long as possible. With over 150 million consoles out in the wild, that's a massive player base, and there's still like 100 million active users a year. And based on how long the 3DS lasted after the Switch launched, we can pretty safely assume that we've got about 2 to 3 years of first-party support left for this thing. It even seems like Nintendo's doing their best to make you keep your old Switch, like handing it down to your little brother or sister or cat or dog. Give it to the fish for all I care. Especially with the new virtual game key card features and how game sharing still works with Switch 1 consoles. And well, that's honestly kind of genius. But let's talk about what Switch 1 owners are actually losing when it comes to the games. Well, aside from the price, almost every game is available on the Switch 2. However, not all games are compatible with it. We can't forget about Labo VR Kit, which is sadly not compatible with the Switch 2. Also, any game that used the IR motion sensor on the original Switch isn't supported on this new one either. But unless you're a 1-2 Switch enjoyer, this really won't affect you. Now, here's something that no one is talking about. The sound of the Joy-Con rumble. I know. Stay with me here. The original Joy-Con rumble is loud. Like if I played it in a silent room, the room wouldn't be silent anymore. But that loudness wasn't just annoying, it was actually kind of useful. Developers could actually change the pitch of the sound depending on the intensity of the rumble, meaning you could literally hear the Joy-Con doing things. Games like Super Mario Bros. Wonder use this in a pretty cool way, like playing musical notes when walking across these musical floors. Or of course, it was a vital feature in Santa Tracker, where it helped to blast out my favorite Christmas tunes. But Nintendo made a point to point out that the rumble is quieter on the Switch 2, meaning playing games like Joy-Con hide and seek won't work as well. Those are the only Switch 1 exclusives that really make it feel unique. Regardless, let's say you got a Switch 1 anyways. We have to talk about the hardware and performance. Now, I basically made it my job to review Nintendo Switch ports. What makes them good, what makes them bad, and what makes me angry. Let's talk about the first-party games. For the most part, Nintendo's own games run very well, especially if you're not a graphics snob like me. If you're obsessed with frame rate counters and resolution, you probably probably won't have many complaints. But even with first-party Nintendo games, the aging hardware sometimes can't keep up with the developers' ideas. You've got recent releases like Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom or Mario & Luigi Brothership, where the frame rate dips just from walking around. Then you've got truly rough ones like Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. These games were broken when they launched, and they're still broken. Glitches, lags, frame rate stutters, it's just a mess. And while games this rough are rare on Switch 1, especially if it's first party, it's worth noting that all of them would run better on Switch 2. In fact, it's already been confirmed that those exact games will run better on Switch 2, without paying any extra money for them. And they just naturally run better because, well, it's on more powerful hardware. Still, for the most part, first party Switch 1 games are a blast and will last you a long time if you're only just picking up a Switch now. You're not getting a bad deal, it's just not the best possible one anymore. But we can't forget about the insane number of third-party games that were brought to the Switch 1 as well. And trust me, I haven't forgotten. Because while a lot of them are totally playable, this is where things start to break down. Some ports are actually amazing. Games like Doom and Doom Eternal. These are what we call miracle ports. They took graphically intense, current-gen games and got them running shockingly well on the Switch 1. And they didn't cut any content either. You got the full game. And there are plenty of other games that make it to the Switch in surprisingly decent shape. The most common downgrade you'll see is a locked 30 frames per second frame rate and a lower resolution, but that's not a deal breaker for everyone. That said, most new third-party ports in 2025 are starting to feel seriously lacking compared to their counterparts on other platforms. Take Hogwarts Legacy, for example. On current-gen consoles and even the Switch 2, it's a full open-world game. You're free to roam wherever you want, but on the Switch 1, they had to chop it up into separate segments. Instead of exploring seamlessly, you have to load into different areas of the map, which completely changes how the game feels. That may not be a big deal for some people, but from a gameplay perspective, it's a huge downgrade. Or one of my favorite examples, Fortnite. This is a live service game that gets constant updates, and those updates just keep getting bigger and bigger. But the problem is that the Switch is the exact same as it always has been, and it's starting to show. Fortnite on Switch has become buggier, laggier, and more broken with each season, and at some point, it's going to hit a wall. There's only so much more it can handle before they're forced to stop supporting it entirely. Now, this console will still get new games, and of course, it seems like Nintendo will be supporting it too. But for me as a longtime Switch user, the console just feels old. Load times, resolutions, frame rates, they're all inferior to other consoles, and especially the Switch 2. Now here's the bright side. If you do decide to get a Switch 1 today, and a Switch 2 later, as I mentioned, pretty much every game is compatible, but also most of the accessories too. The Switch 1 Pro Controller is usable on both consoles, so if you decide to get one, it'll still work. If you got the old Joy-Cons, those can still connect to the Switch 2 as well. So I think right now, as Nintendo is transitioning to the next generation, they aren't leaving this console behind. So the real question is, who should be buying this in 2025? It's the people who don't care about specs. Well, it's the same kind of people that have still been buying it the last year, because yes, this console is still somehow getting sold like crazy. They don't look deep into Nintendo lore like me, and probably a lot of you, and they just want to play Mario Kart or a ton of other Switch 1 games. Let's quickly recap the pros and cons, because I know this was a lot. Here are the pros. It's cheaper, huge game library, still getting support for now. Accessories and digital games carry over, great for casual players and family. The cons, slower load times, lower resolution and performance, some newer games run poorly, support will eventually end, and that's portable with every accessory or feature like Labo. So did you get a Switch 1 recently? Let me know. You probably want to know why I bought a Switch 1 in 2025. Well, you should probably click this video to find out. And hey, look at all these beautiful names. Join the list. And hey, maybe I'll even show you out like James R. Ayo. And hey, if you want, you can like and subscribe. Anyways, I'll see you in the next one. See you later.